Christopher Reeve's life as an activist is equally diverse, working for organizations including Save the Children and Amnesty International. His latest movie, Noise is Off, is now playing around the country, and we're pleased to have him here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. Really is. Tell me about this movie, because I mean, it came from the stage, and there seems to be, how difficult is it to adapt from the stage? I mean, I look at something like Frankie and Johnny, which did not do well at the box office. On the other hand, Driving Miss Daisy did very well. You know, is that particularly difficult, and especially if it's a farce?
Well, I think you just hit it right there. It all depends on the material. If you take something like Driving Miss Daisy, you know, the original idea was to cast Eddie Murphy as the chauffeur.
I didn't know that.
So you might have had Driving Miss Daisy either go through the roof or I think...
Oh, it would have been a very different movie than it was with Morgan Freeman.
The play would have been bent out of shape. What was great about Driving Miss Daisy is they took the story and just filmed it with a reverence or a respect for the material. And I think in something like Frankie and Johnny, it's hard to believe that Michelle Pfeiffer, even on a bad day, is the kind of woman that the play says she is. So those are just casting.
Then,
now in farce, though, the difficulty with farce is that farce depends on seeing a lot of things happen at once. And the danger of worrying, you know, our actor's going to pull it off. In other words, is the person going to come through the door just in time to not get hit with a plate of sardines, etc.? And as you sit there watching these people go through this kind of Rube Goldberg contraption here, you get caught up in that excitement. So the danger of this film would be that you wouldn't get that on screen. And I think Peter Bogdanovich, who is a master of farce, having done What's Up, Doc, which is one of the classics, was very ingenious, and he's done the best possible translation that could have been done by the ingenuity of his camera work, and when he comes in close and when he stays back, and by shooting long takes without a cut, so you get that energy and that tension.
To read about you and know something about the roles you have turned down, A, and B, the roles you've wanted that you didn't get, B, what brought you to this particular role? Was it because Bogdanovich wanted you? Was it because you wanted the role? Or does it just so happen that...
Things happen in simpler ways than that. There's really no design, there's no scheme. I happened to be sitting in an airport lounge and ran into Peter. And we got talking. Hadn't seen him in a long time. What are you doing? Oh, well, I'm thinking about doing Noise is Off. You know, it might be fun to play Freddie in that. We'll be in touch. And then a couple of months later, they called. I am attracted to projects that have a certain risk element. I wouldn't have played Superman in the first place without being attracted to that risk. I mean, how are you going to take this comic book hero and make it somehow three-dimensional and not a buffoon? Death Trap, you know, to play a homosexual and a psychopath in a commercial movie is a career risk. To take a stage farce and do it in the film is a difficult thing to do. I tend to be, I mean, I'm now contemplating a film in which I would play Thomas Jefferson, you know, if they'll have me to do it. But I am turned on by this kind of balancing act of danger. When it's just a pop fly, when it says, you know, he's a preppy from Princeton, I sort of go to sleep. You know, there's not enough to do.
We've got a clip. All right, we've got a clip. This is from Noise is Off, and take a look at this. We'll see the scene, and then Christopher will tell us about what we... Wonderful.
It's actually a relatively calm moment in the play. It gets much more frantic from then on.
Michael Caine is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, this is the second time you've had a role with him.
Right.
Do you learn from an actor like that? I mean, who is such a pro?
Yes. Michael Caine said an interesting thing one time. He said, "It's not important to be a film star, but you can find great satisfaction in being a good film actor." And he certainly is that, because he has the ability to ignore the camera completely, and yet to not make his work too important. So you don't see the artifice. It just happens, and somehow he always looks the same, but you always believe him in the part. It's quite a mystery.
I was at the video store one day, and I picked up this thing on acting, Caine, and it's terrific. And it gives you much more of an understanding of what an actor's life is about and what the craft of acting is about. And therefore, when you go to the theater or when you go watch a movie, you just see it in a different way, having listened to Caine talk about the craft.
He took a group of theater actors who had not done any movie work and said, all right, now, let's adjust what you're doing for the movies. And he taught them. They took that book, actually. It was from the seminar he did with actors in England. And he's one of those actors who has the kind of grace. Anthony Hopkins is the same way, who makes it seem as though they're not trying. It's like, oh, it's just, you know, it's like...
Is this about English training, you think?
No, I don't. I think it's about a certain kind of looseness and charisma and kind of just ease, but they're actually working just as hard as anybody else. They're sort of like swans, that on the surface they're swimming like that, and underneath the little feet are going.
You don't see the technique.
Whereas American actors are like the sadder, you know, Freddie, there's like, why am I carrying these things? What's my motivation? You know, we get awfully intense about it sometimes.
Well, then you identify more with this sort of...
Yes. well, this guy, this is Frayn's affectionate send-up of actors and their insecurity and their need to know why are they doing things. And the truth is, it's basically because the next person's got to come on stage, and you know they need to get rid of you so the next guy can come on.
When looking at your career path, you immediately hit it when you came out of college here to New York. You early roles in the theater, then soap opera, and then there seems to be a period in which it kind of slowed down a little bit. Was that right or not?
No, it sort of picked up pace quite a lot. In fact,
so you've never had a down period at all? Well, I mean, you've had instant success and no real down period. You know better than I do. So.
It depends on how we define down. There are times when I haven't, been that active. In fact, this is the first movie that's come out in 4 years. But I've done another 7 or 8 plays. I've done some characters on cable television that I thought were pretty good, and I've worked in. I'm never not doing something that I find challenging at the time, which is nice.
Are you haunting is not the right word at all. I mean, Superman, would you do it over if you had the opportunity again because of what it did for you in terms of immediate attention to Christopher Reeve?
No, that's not. Yes and no. Yes, but not for those reasons.
Right.
See, sure, I'd do it over again because it was a wonderful part.
Right.
And it left a legacy, and it created a whole kind of screen entertainment. It took those kinds of characters who used to be played by bad actors in black and white B movies and moved them into the forefront. So now you get Dustin Hoffman as Hook, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman,
Jack Nicholson and
Jack Nicholson, really good actors who have no intention of becoming
and Dick Tracy.
Right. They do it for fun, but the Superman led the way in 1977. It's the first time it had been done. And the popular conception is that a part like that would then limit the future for me. The actual problem was the opposite, was that it created so many opportunities. They said, here, have this movie, have that movie, have the other movie, that I often didn't choose as wisely as I could have.
Were they choosing you to do that because you were bankable, because Superman had done well, rather than because they wanted you to play another character like Superman?
Just as Mel Gibson was able to bankroll Hamlet out of playing Lethal Weapon. That's the reality of how this business works. It's sad but true. It's run by lawyers and MBAs who are simply looking at the ledger sheet and have to answer to the board of directors. And so the actor, if you're smart, you learn, now how do I play this against each other so that I do, the old saying is one for them and one for me. So I do Lethal Weapon, and then I do Hamlet. Or I'll do Superman, and then hopefully Thomas Jefferson.
What was, so Thomas Jefferson is your Hamlet in
it's a role. It's a role that I did a film with Merchant Ivory. Their film Howard's End is out at the moment. I did a film. I was really.
You did Room with a View and another.
I was in The Bostonians with Vanessa Redgrave and Jessica Tandy, and was the first big commercial success that they had. And we're having discussions. It hasn't happened yet. I hope it will happen, about playing Thomas Jefferson in a film about his 5 years in Paris and his affair with Sally Hemings. This, to me, again, it's dangerous, it's original, it's exciting, it hasn't been done, would require a lot of research, all things that really get me going. But you see, if I had never played that part that allowed you to hear of me, that process wouldn't have happened. So now the challenges are there just for me to take.
When you look at those parts you didn't take, are you sorry you didn't take Body Heat?
Yeah, there's some parts I didn't take. I was just dumb, there's so many choices there.
The script didn't look good. You weren't sure about Lawrence Kasdan as a director.
I'm embarrassed to say it now. This is we have to be fair here. This is 1981, and Larry Kasdan had not directed a movie.
He was on
and in those days, the idea of a writer directing a film was considered very, very not done. Just as people in television do not do movies. Now, everybody in the movie does. Just the conventional wisdom. The status changes. But at that time, I thought, well. The advice from my agents at the time was try to only work with that list of top directors, Sidney Lumet, George Roy Hill, etc., the Sidney Pollack. And for this unknown to come and this, who knew that it was going to work? Who knew that it was Larry Kasdan?
And it gave William Hurt
a
career.
Yes.
And what about the Bonfire of the Vanities? You wanted that but didn't get it? Or
they didn't want me. They didn't want me. And I took...
Because you weren't bankable in their judgment or because you weren't right for the role?
I think mostly because I wasn't bankable. I hadn't had a hit in a couple of years. Superman 4 had sort of gone down the drain, deservedly so, I must say.
You didn't like the sequels, obviously, as much as the first two.
No, 1 and 2 are for the time capsule. 3 is a little marginal, and 4 is we sort of sweep it under the carpet. And
you did that for Jefferson, Superman 4.
In a roundabout way, I suppose you could say that. But when it came to Bonfire of the Vanities, I felt, reading the book, that I was a dead ringer for Sherman McCoy. I mean, I really thought this was, as I read the page, that I'd have a good crack at it.
You mean physically, or you just, when you thought that...
The whole thing, just who he is.
In the same way someone said that Warren Beatty Bugsy was a role made for Warren Beatty, you thought that Sherman McCoy...
I thought it would have been good casting. I don't claim more than that. What happened, though, was They felt that the audience, there was a lot of different stories, the narrative shifts all over the place. The people out in Hollywood, the MBAs, the people running the studios, consistently, in my opinion, underestimate the intelligence and taste of the American public. And they often tend to go bankrupt doing it. You know, Bonfire of the Vanities did not work. It was miscast all the way down the line.
But look at the Academy Awards. I mean, who would have predicted that a movie that came out in February,
well, that was such a great movie, though.
Yeah, and at the same time, though, and a lot of people were thinking that because it came out early, I mean, it won because it was so overpoweringly good.
Yeah.
In contrast, but it came out early, and people said it might not. Because of that, it was at disadvantage. It was not the, it was up against.
No, I actually thought that Hollywood looked pretty good last night.
I did too. I did. That's my point, though. Nobody would have thought that Silence of the Lambs, it wasn't the early favorite for Best Picture. Was people talked about Beauty and the Beast, and they talked about Bugsy, and they talked about JFK.
Yeah. The main thing is that more pictures, properly directed, properly cast, properly produced, get made, and that the audience, for your $7, I think, you're sitting home, let's go to the movies tonight, honey, what do you want to see? I don't think it matters so much about what star is in it or whatever. You want to see a good story well told. And it could be with people you've never heard of. It doesn't matter. You want that experience. You laugh, you cry, you get involved. You want that to happen. And I think the studios would do well to trust more the American public's taste and intelligence, and if they're going to buy these books, go raid the bestseller list and get all their ideas from books, is to serve them better, to serve the language and the writers of this country better in their material.
Yeah. Well, in Sounds of the Lambs, Jonathan Demme had a great screenplay to work because Ted Talley wrote a terrific screenplay.
Yeah.
Much success to Noises Off and also to playing Jefferson in Paris.
Well, thank you.
Christopher Reeve.